So you need to shoot a shot of a building, but the sun is not where you want it. It maybe is behind the building, and you've got to do it right now. You can't wait. And when you expose for the building, the sky will be overexposed, and we don't want anything overexposed. So what do we do? That exact scenario is something I've dealt with pretty much my entire career, on and off anyway. And today, of course, we've got log, Apple log, if you're shooting on a phone, and the dynamic range is a lot better, but you can still overexpose a sky pretty easily if you're not careful. And so I've got two main ways, two main techniques I use to never overexpose a sky again. All right, this is Apple log, straight out of an iPhone 16 Pro Max. You can see it's holding the sky okay, but when I color correct it, that kind of goes away. So now we'll talk about the first method I use to help with that. Now for option number one, I'm going to add an ND grad filter, and it's pretty much exactly like it sounds. It's a neutral density filter with only part of it darkened to control the exposure of that part of the shot. And the great thing is the filter spins, and so you can line up the grad as needed depending on your shot. Here, for me, it would be the sky. And the grad I'm using is a 0.6, which is only 2 stops. And really, for what I'm doing here in these examples, I could have used a heavier one, maybe 3 or 4 stops, but this is what I have, and it still definitely helps. So the grad works pretty well, but what if we want to reduce the exposure even more? And for technique number 2, I'm doing exposure bracketing. Here you simply shoot the shot twice, once exposing for the main subject, the building or whatever, and then bracket the exposure and expose for the sky. It's very important though that you keep the shot exactly the same and you don't move the tripod. You are essentially doing a visual effects shot here, so the camera cannot move for it to work right. Then you'll take those 2 shots in post-production and composite them together. So here's the composite shot. And now without it, no sky. And again with it. So it looks pretty good and makes a big difference. Now the thing is, you want to make sure you don't overdo it. You don't want it to look too fake, like HDR or anything like that. But either way, it gives it a more polished look. And so how am I doing that? I'm simply using a mask in Premiere Pro. And this will work in pretty much any editing app, by the way. So I draw a mask and then I feather it. Then you put the sky on top of the bottom layer and color correct both. And when they're together, you now have a new composite. So then it just looks like one shot. So now we'll look at another similar example. Another building, this time a little closer. This is the Apple log, looks okay. But when I color correct it, the sky does kind of go away. There is some detail there, but there could be more. And so adding the grad filter here, you do get more detail. You can see the clouds. And so that's a great option. But if you want to do more, and again here, I'm just exposing for the sky. And so the building will go dark, but I want the good exposure for the sky to do the composite. So I'll composite that sky with the clean shot I shot earlier. And ultimately you get a nice look. Comparing them, you got the log, you got the color corrected, and then you've got the composite. Now we'll look at another similar shot, but with a little different approach. This example, I'm out in a park, and so I'm away from any buildings and such, but it's a similar scenario where the sun is behind the building. You can see the long shadows. And so when I expose for the building, the sky gets overexposed. But by adding the ND grad, it does help. That could almost be passable. But we'll take it one step further and do the exposure bracketing. And then again, I'll take this shot, just the sky part, and composite it with the earlier version of the building to create the final look, the final shot. Now we'll take a look at a more complicated setup where we have trees in the shot as well. When you have trees or anything moving, it does get more complicated for sure. And here, that is the case. And in addition here, the parking lot in the back with the cars gets a little bit overexposed. And so when I do my masking and the composite, I have to take all that into consideration. So I'll bracket the exposure here, and you can see the nice clouds in the sky back there. Then the parking lot, you've got more information back there, actually pretty dark. But then when I composite them together and I do the mask, it all looks pretty natural, looks pretty good. A much more polished look. And you could potentially call that a stylized look, but to me, anytime I can save a sky, I like that look better. And I mentioned this is a little more complex from a masking perspective, and it is. Here's the mask. You can see it goes up and around, and you got to be careful because the mask, since the trees are moving, you'll see through it and you'll have weird motion. And so you got to be careful that you're not picking up any of that motion. That's really the main point. But once you get the mask right and you do the composite, it looks really good. All right, and then one more shot similar to the one we just looked at. It's a house with moving trees, and again, the sky above it is blowing out because the sun is off to the right, kind of behind the house. You can see the long shadows. And so when you color correct it, the sky basically blows out. Using the ND grad here does help. Looks pretty good. You could actually use that shot. But then when I bracket, I see a lot more of the sky and of course the clouds. Clouds obviously blow out pretty easily, even with high-end cameras. And so here is the final comp, the sky and the house, without it and with it. And it really looks pretty good, I think. But there's another way to do it too. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned I have 2 techniques to help with sky exposure, but in reality, I have 3. You can do a similar trick to the compositing with color grade masking, or sometimes called using a power window. This can be done in DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, etc. And they all pretty much work the same. The main thing is you need to have detail in the sky. So whether you're shooting log and getting good dynamic range or using an ND grad filter is important. Then in post-production, you mask around the main subject. Here that would be the house. And then you mask around the sky. And remember, it's the same shot here. No compositing anything together. You're just masking and then combining the 2 color grades together to complete the shot. So here they are compared, and they look really similar. First one is the comp. So this is 2 images composited together. And the second one is the mask. And so it's sort of subjective which you like better. The mask, you get more of the roof of the house, but then you lose some of the trees. But in the end, I think they both look good. So whether you use an ND grad filter or bracket the exposure or mask a color grade, there is no good reason to have overexposed sky ever again. And by the way, I didn't even mention doing a true sky replacement, which is a visual effect and in the vein of what I was doing with the compositing. It can be a more advanced technique, but it works well too. So go out there and shoot pretty much any sky shot you want, knowing now you can always make it look great.